Morning, Ed.
Morning.
How are you?
I'm doing cold. I'm cold. How are you?
Yeah, darn cold. Yes, I am.
It's snowing in
I don't know. She put the state fair budget out on the web. I've got my copy, I think. We had a fun meeting, didn't we?
meeting.
Yeah. Too darn bad we didn't get to have the fair. Maybe it gives you time to regroup.
Yeah, if we would have had the fair, we would have lost money. For example, a grandstand show, we pay $100,000 for some of those acts, and we probably wouldn't have had more than 1,000 people in the grandstand. So
Yeah, it was the right decision. Well, I'm looking for papers. I hate looking for papers. I gotta keep.
All right, committee, we're going to get started in just a few minutes. And first, we're going to have a roll call on who actually is attending the meeting this morning. So just hold tight for a little bit.
Hey, Sydney, can you hear me? This Ken.
Yes, I can.
Okay. Well, I got these new earbud things, and so I've been messing with them for an hour. So, okay, good.
Are they
All righty.
Bluetooth things?
What's that?
Bluetooth pieces?
Yeah, they are. So, my kids
my kids got me some too.
Yeah. So,
Mine have got these big headphones that I don't carry them around very easily. So they're in the office. I'm not.
all right. Yeah. Well, that's what I had them with me, and I tried last night, and they'd already run down, so I had to charge them back up again. So we'll see how long they last.
Well, don't talk too much.
It's true. You know me, I never do.
Okay. Well, good to see you this morning.
All right, committee, we're going to go ahead and get started. I know that the chairmen that are going to be reporting out this morning are on their way. And we're going to start with general government budget committee reports that we left on Friday. This is going to be kind of a new format this morning on how we're going to proceed on the committee hearings because most of the committee members are virtual. So I would ask that if you are on WebEx, we've had some issues with some mishaps in regards to WebEx when you're not muted. So please make sure that if you are not speaking or addressing the committee, that you are muted, so we don't continue with those mishaps. Because I bet all of you don't want to be on public record with some of the comments that have been made on WebEx. So right now, we're going to go ahead and do a roll call just to make sure that we do have a quorum, even though we're not having any voting this morning in regards to the budgets. And I'll go through that format on how we're going to move through today. So I'm going to go ahead and do a roll call. Representative Hoffman is here. Representative Wolfmore. She raised her hand. Representative Alcala. I see you on WebEx.
Present.
Representative Ballard.
Here.
Representative Burrows.
Here.
Representative Carlin.
Here.
Representative Carpenter. Representative Kincannon.
Present.
Representative Corbett. Representative Estes. Representative Francis. He just waved his hand. Representative Helgerson. Representative Humphreys.
Present.
Representative Johnson.
Here.
Representative Landwehr.
Present.
Representative Owens.
Present.
Representative Parker.
Here.
Representative Prale. Representative Rajas.
Frozen.
Representative Sutton is on his way. Representative Tarwater. And Representative Williams.
Here.
Okay, so how we're going to move through today's budget committee reports is we're going to have a report out by each of the chairmen for the General Government Budget Committee and the Agricultural and Natural Resources Budget Committee. And what we're going to do is we're going to have the recommendations presented to the committee. As I mentioned before, we're not going to be having any voting. We'll be doing that tomorrow due to the weather circumstances across the state of Kansas. And so if you have any amendments to the budget recommendations, bring those tomorrow, and we'll have discussion on that particular amendment when we actually vote on passing out the budget recommendations from the respective committees. That's just how we're going to work things today. I mean, you can ask questions. If you do have a possible amendment, we can have discussion on that today, but there will actually be no formal voting taking place in regards to that amendment until we do have a quorum of individuals in the building per House rules. So right now we're waiting for the chairman to enter the committee room, and so we'll be at ease until they do arrive. All right, committee. Chairman Sutton has walked into the room. So we'll go ahead and start with the Budget Committee reports. Actually, the first item that we had on the agenda was for bill introductions, but since we're not taking any votes this morning, we're going to pass on that. And if you have any bill introductions, have those introduced tomorrow morning when we have a quorum inside the room and in the building. So right now, I will turn it back or turn it over to Chairman Sutton, who will continue on the budget report outs that he had on Friday and also what was scheduled for today. So Chairman Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize for my tardiness. The sled dogs just weren't in the mood to get started this morning. All right, now, just procedurally here, if we're not voting on anything, do I still move the budget recommendations?
You do not. You'll do that tomorrow.
Okay, very good. All right, let's turn to the Kansas Lottery. You'll find that in Volume 2, page 1334. Volume 2, page 1334.
All right, Chairman Sutton.
All right. For 2021, the agency requests a revised estimate of $344.6 million, all from special revenue funds. The estimate is a decrease of $44 million, or 11.3% below the FY21 approved budget. The decrease is primarily attributable to a decrease in contractual service expenditures by $41.3 million, mainly due to the decrease in the gaming facility manager fee. What you'll see there isn't a decrease in spending exactly as much as a decrease in revenue that is reflected in less returned to the gaming managers. The revised estimate of 95 FTE positions is unchanged. The governor recommends expenditures of $344.2 million, all from special revenue funds. This is a decrease of $371,000 below the agency's revised estimate. The decrease is due to a governor's recommendation to implement a 5% shrinkage rate, which would reduce the budget by $371,000. You'll see that a couple of times here. They're kind of playing with the shrinkage rates. This is, as near as I can tell, mostly a budgetary tool to play with the numbers. Really has no effect on the agency, per the agency's testimony. Additionally, the governor recommends 90 FTE positions, which is a decrease of 5 FTE positions below the agency's 21 estimate. This decrease is due to the elimination of vacant positions. For 2021, the Budget Committee concurs with the governor's recommendation. Wow, that was awesome. And I'll stand for questions.
All right, thank you, Chairman Sutton. Looking on page 1337, looks like the, do we have an idea of what was received as far as lottery revenue in fiscal year 2021?
We do, but I'm gonna have to grab my book for that.
Okay. I do have a series of questions after that.
I'm looking desperately to see if Gabrielle Hull is on the phone here.
I am here, Chairman.
Oh, beautiful, thank you. All right, you will find the answer to the majority of those on page 1337 in the performance measures, where we see the actual from 2020.
And the reason why I asked that question is because when we had the Joint Legislative Budget Committee, we actually did have lottery and also to have them talk about the lottery sales and also in regards to the gaming facilities. And at that point, and Vice Chair Hoffman may correct me if I'm wrong, or Representative Carpenter, because he's on the Joint Legislative Budget Committee as well, they were expecting a downward trend in regards to revenues. But this is showing that the receipts from the lottery tickets is having an increase over 2020, and the same with the state-owned gaming facility revenue of $20 million.
I think that's more projected than anything else. We don't have the actuals for 21 yet, but the real dip took place in 20. I think they're projecting recovering from that dip somewhat.
So how are the gaming facilities operating now? I mean, obviously, they're not full capacity.
No, not at all. As far as the slot machines are concerned, it's about 60%. They kind of have them spaced out as to which ones are open. The poker rooms, I can attest, are completely closed. That has an impact on more budgets than just this one, my personal budget. But also the gaming tables are have fewer people around. You know, they're down to like 50% occupancy as well.
Okay. Was there an increase in the lottery sales because of the pandemic? I mean, obviously, it would be easier for people just to purchase those. And also, and then I have another question.
Okay, go ahead. Oh, we didn't see it in 20.
Okay.
There was a pretty significant downturn in 20.
So then a follow-up question on that. How are the vending machines working throughout the state?
Well, I don't recall exactly the number that was transferred to mental health. There was some amount that, however, it was like 7 million or 12 million. I can't remember exactly. It was somewhere in that ballpark, in that $5 million range. But there was a little bit of a decrease in putting them out due to the fact that, a couple of factors actually, but one of the major ones for 20 was that some of them are geared toward social settings, bars, that sort of thing. Well, that's just not happening. So they didn't roll those out. And so there was a little bit of a slowdown in rolling those out, but they're hoping to continue rolling them out as we go.
And why is that not happening in bars or nightclubs?
Because bars and nightclubs, for the longest period, were closed.
Well, but I mean, are they anticipating to have the vending machines in there, or they're just not interested in having them?
Oh, no, they absolutely are, as soon as there's clientele.
Okay, so, and correct me if I'm wrong, is it the first $10 million goes towards mental health, or 10% of the revenue?
I was thinking it was on a percentage basis with, and I'm not even sure there was an upper boundary put on that. But that I'm doing from memory. Analyst Hull, can you clarify for me?
Sure, it's up to the first 8 million
Oh, there was an upper limit. Okay,
of
very
lottery
good.
vending machines. That's correct.
Excellent, thank you.
And are we, if you look at the transfer, are we expecting to have about the same amount of transfer for fiscal year 2021 as we saw in 2020
Transfer from,
for EDIF?
excellent question. Probably somewhere in the same ballpark, yes.
All right. Thank you, Chairman Sutton. Committee, any questions for Chairman Sutton? All right. You may move on to fiscal year 2022.
All right. Turning to 2022, the agency requests $375.7 million, all from special revenue funds for 22. The request is an increase of $31 million, or 9%, above the 21 estimate. The majority of the increase is attributable to an increase in the gaming facility manager fee fund, or manager fee rather, with the expectation that revenues will be going up in 22. Salaries and wages expenditure increases for merit-based adjustments and expected increases in fringe benefits costs comprise the majority of the remaining adjustment. The request of 95 FTEs is unchanged from the number included in the 21 revised estimate. The governor recommends expenditures of $375.3 million, all from special revenue funds. This is a decrease of $390,000. The decrease is due to the governor's recommendation to implement a 5% shrinkage rate. Additionally, the governor recommends 90 FTEs, which is a decrease of 5 FTE positions below the agency's 22 request. The decrease is due to the elimination of vacant positions. The Budget Committee concurs with the governor's recommendation with the following adjustments. Add the 5 FTE positions to the administration program to fully staff the agency to prepare for potential legalization of sports wagering in Kansas. That was described by the agency. It could have an impact on the agency if we pass sportsbook and don't have employees to implement such legislation. And then add $371,000, all from special revenue funds, to restore the 5% salaries and wages shrinkage rate savings recommended by the governor. Again, we wanted to have the agency to have the flexibility to implement any legislation that may be coming down the pike. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Well, I guess the first question that I would have in regarding to adding the 5 FTE positions, is that not included in the legislation that's in federal and state affairs?
It's not normally our procedure to include FTEs in legislation. We usually leave that up to the agency. I'm not on Fed and State Affairs, so I can't speak to that particular bill for certain.
So reading the language of the Budget Committee's recommendation, is that if the bill passes for sports wagering?
We did not phrase it that way.
Because I'll probably have an amendment tomorrow to pull that out, because we do not know what the status of that bill is or how it'll move through the legislature. So I don't want to add 5 FTE positions if we don't have a bill that actually passes in regards to sports wagering.
Right. The only comment I'd make on that is that as a completely fee-funded agency, my assumption would be that those positions wouldn't be filled unless the legislation is passed. But I would leave that to the will of the committee, absolutely.
All right. Committee, any questions for fiscal year 2022 for Chairman Sutton? All right. Seeing none, we'll continue with any possible amendments and then also the motion to pass out the budget recommendations tomorrow when we have more than a quorum in the building. So now you may move on to the next budget, Chairman Sutton.
All right. Well, while we're on a theme, let's go ahead and continue with the Kansas Racing and Gaming Commission. You'll find that in Volume 2, page 1356.
You may proceed.
Okay. The agency requests a revised estimate of $9.1 million, all from special revenue funds. This is an all funds decrease of $311,000 below the 21 approved amount. The decrease is primarily attributable to a decrease in expenditures for salaries and wages and employer contributions to employee fringe benefits due to vacant positions within the expanded gaming regulation program. The agency requests 99.5 FTE positions, which is a decrease of 2.5. The decrease is primarily attributable to the elimination of vacant positions. The governor recommends expenditures of $8.7 million, all from special revenue funds, a decrease of $334,000 below the agency's revised estimate. The decrease is primarily attributable to the governor's recommendation to increase the agency's current 5% shrinkage rate to 10%, which decreases expenditures for salaries and wages by $338,000, and that decrease is partially offset by increases in contractual services and commodities. The governor concurs with the agency's revised estimate for 99.5 FTE positions, and the Budget Committee concurred as well.
All right, committee, any questions on fiscal year 2021? Seeing none, you may proceed.
All right, for 2022, the agency requests $9.1 million, all from special revenue funds. This is an increase of $74,000. The increase is attributable to expected increases in employer contributions to salaries and wages, fringe benefits, including group health insurance. Additionally, the agency anticipates increased expenditures for computer and professional equipment. The agency requests 99.5 positions for 22, which is unchanged from 21. The governor recommends expenditures of $9 million, all from special revenue funds. This is a decrease of $171,000 below the agency's request. The decrease is due to the governor's recommendation to include a shrinkage rate of 5% to salaries and wages for fiscal year 22. Again, with the manipulating the shrinkage rates, but nonetheless, the Budget Committee concurs with the governor's recommendation for 22. And I'll stand for questions.
All right, committee, do you have any questions in regards to fiscal year 2022 for the Kansas Racing and Gaming Commission? All right, seeing none, that ends discussion. Do you have something to say, Chairman Sutton?
The shrinkage rate was reduced in 21 to 10%, or was increased to 10% in 21 and decreased to 5% in 22, and nobody questions why that happened?
I guess explain why that happened.
I don't know why that happened. It didn't make any sense to me either. I was just surprised that no one noticed that.
All right, any further discussion? All right, tomorrow morning you'll make your motion on those particular budgets. So proceed on to the next budget.
All right, well, let's go on. Since we're on racing, gaming, and gambling, let's go to governmental ethics. You'll find that on volume 3, page 1676.
You may proceed.
All right. The agency requests a revised estimate of $717,000, including $447,000 from SGF in 21. This is an all funds increase of $6,000 above the approved 21 amount. The increase is an all funds the increase is all in special revenue funds. The increase is attributable to conversion of a part-time attorney to an FTE position as approved by the 2020 legislature. The governor subsequently allotted funding for this position. However, the agency funded the position by reducing contractual service costs for billed IT expenses and temporary data entry assistance. The revised estimate includes 8 FTE positions, which is the same as the 21 approved number. The governor concurred, and so did we. Stand for questions.
You may move on to 2022.
All right. For 2022, the agency requests expenditures of $724,000, including $450,000 SGF. This is an all funds increase of $6,453, or 0.9% above the 21 revised estimate. This includes an SGF increase of $3,000 and a special revenue fund increase of $3,000 above the 21 revised estimate. The increase is primarily attributable to salaries and wages fringe benefit adjustments. The request includes funding for 8 FTE positions, which is the same as 21. The governor concurred, and so did we.
You may move on to 2023.
Very good. The agency requests operating expenditures of $735,577, including $450,000 SGF. The request is an all funds increase of $11,000 or $11,813 above the 22 request. This includes a special revenue funds increase of $11,813 above the 22 request. This increase is primarily attributable to increased postage expenditures due to FY 2022 being an election year. The request includes 8 FTE positions, which is the same as the 22 request. The governor concurred, and so did we.
Committee, any questions for Chairman Sutton in regards to fiscal years 2021, 2022, and 2023? All right, seeing none, tomorrow we'll entertain your motion. You may move on to the next budget.
All right, let's go to the Secretary of State next. You'll find that in volume 2, page 988.
All right, you may proceed.
All right. The agency requests a revised estimate of $9.1 million, all from special revenue funds. This is an all funds increase of $2.7 million above the 21 approved budget. This increase is all from HAVA funds provided for in the Federal Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, the CARES Act, and is transferred to local units of government. The governor concurs with the agency's estimate, and the Budget Committee agreed.
Can you elaborate on the Federal Help America Vote Act and the funds that they received from the CARES Act?
Sure. The agency, whenever we receive HAVA funds, that has to be matching. We have to also contribute money to match those funds. It just so happened that we have quite a bit of HAVA funds available to us. And so when they received $2.7 million from the CARES Act, they then used that to leverage more money from HAVA in order to implement various safety protocols in voting, the partitions and the stylus pens and the sanitizer and so forth.
All right, thank you. And then what was the amount they received in the CARES Act, do you know?
I believe it was a straight match. I believe it was $2.7 million. And Gabrielle, am I correct on that? Yep, she's nodding. I'm right.
Well, and Friday evening, I participated in the Kansas Legislature show that's on our local PBS station in our area, and the moderator wanted to focus on the federal elections, and namely, he wanted to talk about the fraud, or he was saying the lack thereof of fraud that went on. Was there any discussion in committee from the Secretary of State's office in regards to how the elections transpired in the state of Kansas in fiscal year, or for 2020 in the election cycle?
There was some discussion. The Secretary of State is very pleased with the way elections worked out in Kansas. We had, first off, understand that we're a little bit ahead of the curve in a number of areas. And once I get my bill passed, we'll be through in all of the areas. But more on that to come. But right now, we had already a couple of years ago required that any new voting machines purchased had a printout that could be audited. You know, so first off, so the voter could make sure that what it said is what they voted, and secondly, that that could be audited to make sure that the vote counts added up the same way as the cards. So there are still, as I understand it, about 12 machines that are kind of legacy that exist in predominantly western Kansas right now, but they're aging out of the system very quickly. We're hoping to get all statewide that machines that can be audited. But as far as the in-person voting is concerned, things went very, very well. All of the machines are required to be audited, and those audits came back clean. So we had a good election in Kansas.
And if I recall, the voter participation was 70%?
It was through the roof, absolutely.
And how are did the Secretary of State's office say anything in regards to mail-in ballots?
We didn't focus on that a great deal because that is kind of left up to each individual county as to how those are handled. Myself, I see some areas where we can improve that, the security of the mail-in voter process, but there were no incidents that were reported.
All right, thank you.
And
Committee.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I wanted to clarify, the total amount received for HAVA Cares was 4.6 million. They have a 20% match. So that increased expenditure was for the 20% match.
All right, thank you. And
Thank you,
Gabrielle.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions in regards to fiscal year 2021 for Chairman Sutton? All right, seeing none, you may move on to 2022.
Here's where I finally got to, kind of redeem my reputation here a little bit. The agency requests $6.9 million for 22, including $927,585 from the State General Fund. This is an all funds decrease of $2.3 million below the 21 revised estimate. This increase is attributable to one-time expenditures made in 21 for the HAVA CARES Act that do not repeat in 22. The $927,585 SGF increase is attributable to a required state match to release the federal HAVA funds. State match funds are transferred from the SGF to the agency's democracy fund. The reason for that is that federal law requires that it's in an interest-bearing account. So that's where the democracy fund is set up. It's an interest-bearing account for matching the HAVA funds. The governor concurs with the agency's funding request for 22. The governor recommends $927,585 as a direct SGF transfer to the Democracy Fund instead of an SGF appropriation to meet the state match requirement for the HAVA Election Security Grant and HAVA CARES Act. The Budget Committee concurs with the governor's recommendation with the following adjustment. Delete the transfer of $924,500 of the total $927,585 to the Democracy Fund for state match requirements of the HAVA CARES Act for 22. Oh, if I read that next sentence, then all of a sudden I don't look quite so tough. Oh, well. The Secretary of State has indicated that HAVA CARES Act state match requirements can be met with existing special revenue funds with the exception of $3,085. We also want to add language to reimburse the Secretary of State from the SGF for costs incurred for the publication of a constitutional amendment during the August 22 election for fiscal year 23.
All right, in regards to the deletion of the money for the HAVA CARES Act, and you have here that they can be met with existing special revenue funds with the exception of $3,085.
Correct.
Where is that $3,085 going to come from?
That will still have to be an SGF transfer, as it was proposed by the agency and the governor.
But it's not indicated that it'd be an SGF.
We only removed $924,500.
Okay, so it's in a, so that is affixed into the removal of that $924,000.
The original transfer was $927,585. We only took out $924,000
I
because
just want to make sure that
we were being charitable.
all right, I just want to make sure that we have the $3,085
We have
coming
that in
from
there.
somewhere.
Right.
And then do we know how much the cost will be for the constitutional amendment to be placed on the August 2022 ballot?
We don't. State law requires it being published for, I think, 3 weeks prior to the election in the paper of record. As law stands now, those rates can vary wildly from newspaper to newspaper. Wouldn't be a bad idea to look at perhaps another option on that, but that's for another bill.
That is for another bill. I'm just wondering, as far as a dollar amount being tied to the budget, I mean, obviously, we've had constitutional amendments prior to this one that's going to be added on to the August 22 ballot, so we should have a ballpark figure on how much it would cost.
Well, and we had some discussion on that. The determining factor is how many column inches this amendment will end up occupying. And some are very small, some have been traditionally rather large. And so with that wide variance, we didn't feel real comfortable picking a number and hoping that we were right.
So on item number 2, are we just kind of giving a blanket amount to the Secretary of State's office in regards to this? I mean, how are we going to monitor that?
The discussion there is that he turns in his receipts and gets reimbursed.
But that won't be until fiscal year 2023.
That is correct. And that's why we wanted to add the language in 22 so that that mechanism could be in place for 23.
But you're looking at reimbursement not happening until the legislature comes back in January of 2023.
Correct. And that's why we're just looking to add language to reimburse the Secretary of State, not actually reimbursing them in the budget, but just to add language that this can be reimbursed from SGF.
I would like some information from the Secretary of State's office as far as a projection of how much this might cost, instead of just a blanket statement saying we're going to reimburse when we don't know what that amount is going to be.
That's valid.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Tarwater.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. February 2nd, I believe, we voted in the House on HB 2079, transferring some of the duties from the Secretary of State to the Attorney General's office. If that should pass, how would that affect this budget? We're going to have to come back and relook at all this that affects both budgets, or does that happen automatically?
Chairman Sutton.
I believe that transfer of power went from the Secretary of State's office to the AG's office, in which case, theoretically, that would mean fewer FTE positions necessary in the Secretary of State's office. The reality of that is, though, that those positions, they've been referring it to the AG's office anyway.
Is there anybody else that wishes to ask a question? Representative Burrows, do you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In reference to the Secretary of State's, your comment, Mr. Chairman, about the cost of the constitutional amendment, over the past 10 or 12 years, staff may correct me on this, I have introduced a proviso in the Secretary of State's office mandating that we have a fiscal note prior to any constitutional amendment hitting the floor. I'm not so sure that we did not have that prior amendment being discussed in the chamber. But Mr. Chairman, you are absolutely accurate. One year we had 13 constitutional amendments proposed in the legislature, and we had no way of knowing what the cost would be. So I may bring forward again, Mr. Chairman, a proviso stating that before any constitutional amendment can be brought to the House floor, we have an understanding of how much that constitutional amendment will cost the state.
Well, thank you, Representative Burrows. I mean, I agree. I think we need to know exactly what it's going to cost the Secretary of State's office, instead of, from the Budget Committee's recommendation, just basically having a zero amount mentioned, and we have no idea what that's going to be and what the impact will be in fiscal year 2023 when we talk about the budget. Any further questions for Chairman Sutton? All right. Seeing none, you may proceed.
All right, well, let's go on to the Kansas Department of Labor. You'll find that in Volume 1, page 230. Understand that when we're discussing the Department of Labor budget, first off, the modernization program is in a separate bill. It's not proposed in this budget, nor is the unemployment fund something that we budget. It's the operating expenses. Just want to cut that one off before we get started.
All right, you may proceed.
All right. The agency estimates revised 21 total expenditures of $716.2 million, including $1.4 million from SGF. This is an increase of $512 million, or 250%, all from special revenue funds above the 21 approved amount. The agency estimates revised 21 capital improvement expenditures of $1.6 million, all from special revenue funds. This is an increase of $460,000 above the 21 approved amount. The increase is entirely due to the agency's supplemental request for capital improvements. These projects include roof replacement at 401 Southwest Topeka, adjusted costs for the first floor remodel at 2650 East Circle Drive, masonry work at 2650 East Circle Drive, and a barrier for the front desk, sneeze guard basically, at 401 Southwest Topeka. The agency estimates revised 21 operating expenditures of $714.6 million, including $1.4 million SGF. This is an increase of $511 million, all from special revenue funds above the 21 approved amount. The increase is primarily due to increased expenditures benefit payments from the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund. The increase is also due to increased expenditures on staffing due to additional positions, primarily in the unemployment insurance program. Sorry. Get a little chuckle there. The revised estimate includes 506 FTE positions, which is an increase of 120 positions from the FY21 approved number. The increase is due to additional staffing in response to the COVID-19 pandemic and increased unemployment insurance program activity, as you may have noticed. The governor's recommendation, the governor recommends expenditures of $746.2 million, including $1.4 million SGF. This is an all funds increase of $30 million and an SGF decrease of $157 from the agency's 21 revised estimate. The governor recommends fiscal year 21 capital improvement expenditures of $1.6 million, all from special revenue funds. This is the same as the agency's 21 revised capital improvements estimate. The governor recommends 21 operating expenditures of $746.2 million, including $1.4 million SGF. This is an all funds increase of $30 million or 4.2% and an SGF decrease of $157 from the agency's 21 revised estimate. The SGF decrease is due to lapsing monies reappropriated from 20 to 21. The all funds increase is caused by the governor, including the $30 million transfer from the Coronavirus Relief Fund recommended by the Spark Task Force and approved by the State Finance Council. This transfer was approved after the state submitted its budget and therefore was not included in the agency's revised estimate. These funds have been primarily used for contracted staffing in the unemployment insurance call center, as well as in information technology to implement new unemployment insurance programs. Those would be the federal programs. The House Budget Committee concurred with the governor's recommendation, and I will stand for questions.
Committee, are there questions for Chairman Sutton in regards to Department of Labor for fiscal year 2021? All right, seeing none, you may proceed.
All right. For fiscal year 22, the agency requests expenditures of $454 million, including $1.5 million SGF. This is an all funds decrease of $262 million and an SGF increase of $5,600. The agency requests fiscal year 22 capital improvement expenditures of $1.3 million, all from special revenue funds. This is an all funds decrease of $300,000 below the 21 revised estimate. The decrease is due to the completion of the first floor renovation at 2650 East Circle Drive South. Excuse me. And the completion of the roof replacement at 401 Southwest Topeka, partially offset by boiler replacement at 401 Southwest Topeka and an increase in debt service. The agency requests fiscal year 22 operating expenditures of $452 million, including $1.5 million from SGF. This is an all funds decrease of $262 million and an SGF increase of $5,600 from the 21 revised estimate. The SGF increase is primarily due to increased employer contributions to CAPERS and group health insurance. The all funds decrease is primarily due to decreased benefit payments from the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund. And that may be because we have lower unemployment, or it could be that we just don't have the money. The governor recommends fiscal, that was humor in a budget report. Feel free to chuckle. Thanks, Kyle. The governor recommends fiscal year 22 total expenditures of $454 million, including $1.3 million SGF. This is the same as the all funds recommendation as the agency's fiscal 22 request. The governor recommends fiscal year 22 capital improvements expenditures of $1.3 million, all from special revenue funds. This is the same as the agency's fiscal year 22 request. The governor recommends fiscal year 22 operating expenditures of $452.4 million, including $1.3 million SGF. While the all funds total is the same as the agency's request, there is a shift in expenditures of $145,000 from SGF to agency fee funds. The governor recommends implementing the agency's reduced resources budget and using fee funds to offset the SGF decrease contained in the reduced resources budget. You will see once again that the House Budget Committee concurred with everything except we expressing concern over the practice of reducing SGF expenditures and replacing the funding sources with fee funds. We're closing the bank of KDOT, but by golly, we're opening a whole bunch of little branch offices in every agency across the state. With that, I'll stand for questions.
Can you elaborate on that last comment?
Have you noticed, I have voiced this concern on a number of budgets where the SGF decrease is decreased to the agency, and they're asked to supplant that funding with fee funds. That may not technically be a sweep, but it's a sweep, all right? And that's where that's the concern that we're expressing, that this sort of budgeting cannot be maintained. These fee funds are going to dry up, and then we'll be left with a monumental increase in SGF spending in order to fund the agencies as they, in turn, increase their fees to try to build back up their fee fund. It's not maintainable.
All right, and I think you prefaced when you were starting on fiscal year 2021 that in the governor's budget, she does have an upgrade to the, I believe, the unemployment system of $37.5 million as far as a technical increase. And you said that was in a separate bill?
Right. We're hearing that in Commerce is 2186, I believe, and we heard that bill here in Appropriations. Well, we heard the financial aspect of it here in this committee in 2185.
All right, so if that bill would happen to make its way through the legislature and is signed by the governor, when we put the budget bill together, then we always have the condition that any bill with a fiscal note, it was factored into the budget itself.
Right. It would have to be, yeah, looking at $38 million there for the third time.
All right, thank you. Committee, any questions for Chairman Sutton? Representative Tarwater.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the 22 budget, I don't see the same increase for the call center type people. Is that in there anywhere?
Chairman Sutton.
What you don't see, I believe, is a decrease. So I think it's carrying over from, if I'm doing this from memory, let me review it, 1 second.
I seen all funds decrease $262 million.
One moment, I'm reviewing. Analyst Potts, I'd like to phone a friend.
Victoria?
No problem, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yes, we can.
Great. You are correct. So there is a decrease of about $260 million from 21 to 22, but the vast majority of that is in benefits payments. And this is on page 241 of the budget analysis, in case you're wondering. So there is $30 million in Spark money in 21. The agency, but there is no decrease in 22. So the agency would be covering those with federal funds that they receive for the administration of the unemployment insurance program. So you're correct. There is no decrease.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Committee, any further questions for Chairman Sutton? Representative Rogers.
Thank you. I have my hand up. I don't know if you saw that. That's fine. Mr. Chairman, does this solve our problem or the problems we're having? You know, I guess that's my biggest question. We're throwing a lot of numbers around, but does this, you know, solve the issue we're dealing with, looking at it from a year to 18 months down the road?
Chairman Sutton?
Mr. Chairman, no, it does not. This does not include any modernization. It does include the contracted outsourcing of the unemployment insurance program, but this does not in any way solve our problems. That's going to be left up to the modernization program, that, like I mentioned, in a separate bill.
I understand that. So in sense, is this just a big Band-Aid? I mean, I understand the modernization issue, but looks like I guess, will we be functioning until this thing gets modernized?
Mr. Chairman, we will be functioning at the level that we're currently at until this is modernized, would be my best summation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions for Chairman Sutton? All right. Seeing none, you may move on.
I think I'm finished. Did I have any other ones
You're
for
not. You
today?
have the Pooled Money Investment Board and the State Treasurer and Capers.
I'm going to have to return to that in just a moment after I run upstairs and grab those budget recommendations. So if we could take 5, that would be fantastic.
That's fine. We'll be at ease.
All right. Also, by the way, I have an update from the Secretary of State's office. They have an estimated projection on the cost of printing that constitutional amendment, an estimated projection of between $75,000 and $150,000. The 2019 publication was $55,000.
Okay, so when we have the motion tomorrow in regards to approving the budget for the Secretary of State's office, we may want to have language in $150,000 for the August 2022 primary constitutional amendment. And then if there's any adjustment that needs to be made of monies that is not spent for that constitutional amendment on the ballot, then we can make that adjustment in the legislature in 2023.
I think that would be absolutely A-OK with the Secretary of State's office. And I also would consider that the Budget Committee would be acceptable to that.
Okay. So we'll be at ease for a few
Amenable.
minutes so you can
Yeah.
gather that information.
Let me go get the homework from the dog. 1 second.
All right. Well, except for us. We're here. So that's the duty of the Kansas state government that we're here. So, all right, Chairman Sutton.
All right, upon further review, I do have a few other budgets today. Let's start with the Pooled Money Investment Board. That's in Volume 2, page 1085.
You may proceed.
Okay. The agency requests a revised estimate of $762,000, all from the PMIB fee fund, unchanged from the 21 approved amount. The revised estimate includes $547,000 for salaries and wages expenditures, which is an increase of $575 above the 21 approved amount. The increase is attributable to one employee promotion and increases in employer contributions to salaries and wages and fringe benefits. The salaries and wages increase is offset by a decrease in contractual services. The governor concurs, and so did we.
Move on to 2022, and then I do have some questions.
Okay, very good. The agency requests $762,595, all from Pooled Money Investment Portfolio Fee Fund for 22. This is an increase of $570 above the 21 revised estimate. The increase is attributable to an increase in salaries and wages and commodities, which is partially offset by a decrease in contractual services. The governor concurred, and so did we.
All right, thank you, Chairman Sutton. Actually, I have a question, and I know it doesn't really pertain to the budget for the Pooled Money Investment Board, but it will pertain to the overall state budget. Mm-hmm. And in the governor's recommendation, she has delaying the final payment of the Pooled Money Investment Board loan that we took out in 2017 until 2023, and then scheduling that payment out for 10 years. My preference, and I'm assuming the Senate will be on the same, is to just pay off that final payment in fiscal year 2022 and then just eliminate that loan altogether. Was there any discussion in regards to that avenue?
There was, and that, by the way, would be my preference as well. There was some discussion on that. The reality of it is, it's a state agency loaning another state agency a 0% loan. The reality is no money actually moved. As far as for accounting purposes, for budgeting purposes, yes, pay the thing off. The reality is impact is effectively zero.
Well, and I would just make the comment that, I was not in favor of going before the House of Representatives and asking for that loan to be made in 2017. Obviously, we had to do it in order to balance the books for that current budget year. I would like, and I need to maybe speak with the governor as far as the rationale of pushing the payment off till 2023 and then rescheduling it for 10 years. I really don't understand that perspective. And it would be my preference just to have it included in the budget for fiscal year 2021, that we just go ahead and pay it off and be done with it.
I would support you in that endeavor.
All right. We do have a hand raised. Representative Wolfmore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I just wanted to follow up on what Chairman Sutton responded. I believe the governor. Well, first of all, I believe the governor did this just so there's more money available for our budgeting purposes. And so just to follow up on what Chairman Sutton said, it is a paper transaction only. The question was asked, does that hurt our investment potential or change that in any way? And they answered that it does not. So it doesn't change the amount of money we'd have to invest in any potential returns from that. So it sounds like there's really no effect of continuing to pay this off at a later date. I understand your preference and I appreciate that. I'm just offering further information. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, and I will say, when the governor submitted her budget, we didn't know exactly what revenues would be projecting in the ongoing months. Obviously, in the month of January, we saw $90 million over the expected revenues. And so, I mean, in a way, I do understand why the governor did want to do that. It was obviously to have an ending balance that she's statutorily required to have when she submits her budget. And that was probably just one avenue or aspect of hitting that 7.5%. But now knowing where revenues are at and looking at the profile, I think it'd be prudent for us just to go ahead and pay it off. And like I said, I'll probably have a discussion with the governor's office in regards to this particular aspect of her budget. Representative Wolfmore, you have another comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to ask what, I know what the Senate did in terms of tax policy. What effect might that have on, if it passes the House? I don't know if it will, on our revenues available to us. That's something we'll probably have to take into consideration also.
Well, and
Thank
I
you,
would
Mr.
say
Chair.
we haven't had the discussion yet on the House floor in regards to what passed out of the Senate. And I really don't know what the indication from the second floor will be if that was to pass the House. So we would have to just, I guess, wait and see exactly how that would impact. As it stands right now, from the profile, is we do have a healthy ending balance for the state of Kansas, better than what we projected in April of 2020, and even better than we projected in November of 2020 when the revised estimates came out. And so I really can't say as of right now how that would affect the bottom line for the state of Kansas because it's only passed one chamber. And so we would have to have discussion on that if it were to become law. Representative Prahl.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can somebody refresh my memory on what's the loan balance right now on that?
On the Pool Money Investment Board
Yes.
loan, I believe it's the final payment of $132 million. Is that about right?
I was thinking it was supposed to be 60 some odd, but did we skip the payment last year?
I believe we did
Okay.
to help with the balance.
In which case, yeah, you're probably correct on that.
But we can definitely get that dollar amount
That's
for you.
close enough. I just needed an answer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further questions for Chairman Sutton? All right, I'm not seeing any. We'll go ahead and move on, and we'll have your motion tomorrow morning in regards to the Pool Money Investment Board. The next budget, Chairman Sutton.
All right, well, let's go on to the Office of the State Treasurer. That's in Volume 2, page 1063.
You may proceed.
All right. The agency requests a revised estimate of $28 million, all from special revenue funds. This is a decrease of $3 million below the 21 approved budget. The decrease is primarily attributable to a decrease in estimated payments for unclaimed property claims. The revised estimate includes 39 FTE positions, which is the same as 21. The governor concurs, and so did the House Budget Committee.
Move on to 2022.
All right. In 22, the agency requests $82 million, all from special revenue funds. This is an increase of $54.1 million above the 21 revised estimate. This increase is primarily attributable to $54 million for expenditures from the local ad valorem tax reduction fund. The request includes 39 FTE positions, which is unchanged from the number included in the 21 revised estimate. The governor recommends expenditures of $28 million, all from special revenue funds for fiscal year 2022. This is a decrease of $54 million below the agency's request. The decrease is due to the governor not recommending the $54 million transfer from SGF to the LAVTR fund for 22. The Budget Committee concurs with the governor's recommendation for 22 with the following notation. Recommend the transfer from the SGF to the LAVTR, which is suspended for 22 in the budget recommendation, be considered for future fiscal years. Not making the transfer, but wanting to make sure that it stays on the radar.
Which we have done. We have the discussions in regards to the budget in the past.
Right.
So I guess, was there any discussion in regards to the ad valorem tax reduction fund? I believe is last year in the governor's budget recommendation, she wanted half of that to be transferred? to the local counties?
I believe half of it was the request last year. I don't think that passed out, though.
Right, it didn't.
As far as I know, the last time that we actually made that transfer was in 2004.
I think you're right. It's been a while.
Right.
And I know the discussion has been, when we've discussed this in conference, of if we haven't done it for that period of time, why do we even have it still on the statutes? And obviously, that was a request or a recommendation that was made by the special tax committee that was set up from the governor's office, and they had discussions in regards to the ad valorem tax reduction fund last year. But I'm just like, there was a recommendation to have a partial amount go back to the counties last year, and then this year it's retaining the full amount.
Right.
Committee, any further questions for Chairman Sutton in regards to fiscal year 2021 for the State Treasurer's Office? Seeing none, you may proceed.
Okay, I believe that was 22 that I just.
Oh, you just went through 22.
Yeah.
I apologize.
Well, that's all right.
All right. Tomorrow we'll entertain the motion to approve the budget for the State Treasurer. And so Chairman Sutton, you may proceed.
All right. Well, let's just keep this roll going. Let's go to capers. Once again, I'll remind the committee that the capers trust fund is not a budgeted item in their operating budget, so we can put that one to bed before we even get started. You'll find this in volume 2, page 1315.
All right, you may start.
All right. The agency requests a revised estimate of $52.5 million from special revenue funds in 21. The revised estimate is an all funds increase of $64,000 above the amount approved by the 20 legislature. The increase is primarily due to revised investment-related management expenses, which is a good thing, by the way. What that means is that we got more return on our investment, so we paid higher commissions. That's a good thing. Partially offset by reduced administration expenses from the Group Insurance Reserve Fund. The revised estimate includes expenditures to begin the modernization process of the Capers Pension Administration Program in 21. The revised estimate also includes higher expenditures for employee pay, offset by lower budgeted expenditures for computer system maintenance and staff travel, which didn't exist. These expenditures are funded by existing resources in 21 and do not change the overall amount approved by the 20 legislature. The request also includes 98.4 FTE positions, which is the same as approved. The governor recommends expenditures of $52.7 million, all from special revenue funds. This recommendation is an all funds increase of $200,000 above the 21 revised estimate, and this is due to CARES Act money that was received by the agency. The agency estimates using these funds for COVID-19 relief expenditures, including emergency protective measures and conference room equipment for streaming Board of Trustees meetings, thus no travel. The recommendation also includes 98.4 FTE positions, which is the same as the 21 revised. The Budget Committee concurs with the governor's recommendation in 21 and adds the following notation. The Budget Committee commends and supports the agency in its efforts to modernize the pension administration system to improve the system's functionality, user experience, and overall efficiency. The 2020 legislature approved expenditures to conduct an assessment of the existing pension administration system, and the Capers Board of Trustees subsequently moved to pursue modernization. The agency estimates a 5-year process to modernize the system and has budgeted $20.6 million for that project in total, including $1.5 million in 21, all from existing resources. Additional information on the modernization project can be found on page 1327 of the budget analysis. And I'll stand for questions.
Committee, any questions for Chairman Sutton in regards to fiscal year 2021 for Capers? Seeing none, you may proceed to 2022.
All right. In 2022, the agency requests $60.6 million, all from special revenue funds. The request is an all funds increase of $8.1 million above the revised 21 estimate. The increase is primarily due to continued expenses for the modernization of the pension administration system. Expenditures for preliminary stages of the modernization process were approved by the 20 legislature and included in 21 revised estimate. For fiscal year 22, the agency anticipates laying the technical and infrastructure groundwork for the modernization process, including processes related to benefit calculator automation, user interface updates, data profiling, and cleansing, member web portal interface and functionality, and business process management. The increase is also attributable to additional expenditures for investment management fees, which are based on performance of those investments. An increase of $1.6 million. Again, that's a good thing. The increase is partially offset by expenses for IT, for information processing equipment incurring in 21 that are not present in 22. The request also includes 98.4 FTE positions, which is the same as the 21 revised estimate. The governor concurs, and so did the budget committee, with the continued commendation on the modernization project. And I'll stand for questions.
Committee, any questions for Chairman Sutton? All right, seeing none. And tomorrow you'll make a motion to recommend these budgets, and we'll also have discussion on any possible amendments.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, committee, my intent today was to get caught up on some of the budgets that we pushed back from Friday. And we already did have it regularly scheduled for this morning in regards to the budgets for the Agriculture and Natural Resources Budget Committee. So I would just implore all of the chairmen to be aware of when your budgets are going to be scheduled out, because this was regularly on the schedule. I do not want to push these budgets off. We will push off the one budget of the Department of Agriculture. But this is going to be a little unorthodox because we do want to get caught up on the budget recommendations. So, Chairman, please make aware of when you need to report out, because this was regularly scheduled for today. So, actually, I'm going to have Vice Chairman Hoffman, with the assistance of Representative Carlin, in regards to some of the budgets from the Agriculture and Natural Resources Budget Committee. And the reason why I'm going to have him go ahead and do with the budget recommendations from that committee is because he served as chairman of that committee for many years and is aware of those. I will go ahead and turn it over to him. With the exception of the Department of Agriculture, we will have that pushed off until tomorrow. But all the others we will discuss right now so we can get caught up on the budget recommendations. Vice Chairman Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee, if you'll turn to page 1874 for the Board of Veterinary Examiners.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Carlin here.
Yes.
I didn't bring the big books home, so hang on just a minute. Let me find my material. We're starting with which, please?
We're starting with the Board of Veterinary Examiners.
Okay, thank you.
And it's in volume 3.
I'm sorry, I found my materials. Thank you.
All right, Vice Chairman Hoffman.
Okay, the agency estimates the revised 2021 expenditures of $341,000, all from special revenue funds, which is a decrease of $14,769, or 4.2% below the amount approved by the 20 legislature. This decrease is attributed to less travel, gasoline, postage, and computer services, I would assume, due to the virus. It's also partially increased expenditures from the relief fund for computer equipment to enable work from home and protective equipment. Revised estimate includes 4 FT positions, which is the same as approved. The governor concurs with the agency's 2021 revised estimate, and so does the budget committee.
All right, any questions for Vice Chair Hoffman? Representative Carlin, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, we did talk quite a bit about their fees, and I believe we're raising fees. I'm looking for the page. Yeah. I guess they maybe have already raised the fees, but we talked about how many people are not paying their licenses because of the emergency declaration where they don't have to pay their licenses, and what that is doing to their income. But we didn't make any changes, but we did note that because they didn't have to pay, they weren't paying. So she's going after them to try to get those funds collected. It was an interesting discussion. We really discussed a lot of things about what they were doing, about their mobile veterinarians and so on and so forth. But if there aren't any questions, we approved our budget, and so we'll just move on. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Representative Carlin. Representative Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm really looking to understand the budget trend on page 1878. It looks like the operating expenditures are relatively stable through 19, 20, 21. But then when I look at the graph for the operating expenditures, I see a nosedive. What's going on in that graph?
Representative Carlin, was there any discussion in committee in regards to that?
Well, I think it just, Representative Hoffman said, they just aren't spending money because they're not going out and doing all the things they've done before. Where he was reading, it said, let me see, where was it? The decrease in contractual services was due to the expenditures of travel, and they're just not doing all the things they did this year. Those expenses will go back up when they resume their full activity. Victoria, do you have anything to add to that?
Victoria? Victoria, unmute yourself.
Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. Representative Carlin is correct. There was a decrease in expenditures for fiscal year 21, but on page 1878, it's actually just a mistake in the graph. The graph is reflecting the numbers below. So if you look below, you'll see there isn't that harsh of a nosedive in expenditures. The graph is just not accurately reflecting the numbers. So I'm sorry about that. That's my fault.
Thank you, because I didn't think we had that big a loss. Thank you so much.
And Vice Chairman Hoffman and I were just having a sidebar conversation in regards to the graph does not reflect exactly what the numbers are showing at the bottom.
And that was my confusion as well, although I only go by the pictures, not the numbers. Yeah, that gets confusing.
Any further questions, Representative Sutton? All right, see none. Any further questions for either Vice Chairman Hoffman or Representative Carlin? If not, Vice Chairman, you may move on to fiscal year 2022.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The agency requests fiscal year 2022 expenditures of $355,971, all from special revenue funds. This is a decrease of $4,588 or 1.3% below the 2021 revised estimate. And this decrease is primarily due to decreased expenditures of CARES Act money, due to decrease in experiential salary and wages due to hiring an employee at a lower salary. The request includes 4 FTE positions, which is the same as 2021 revised estimate. Governor concurs with the agency, and so does the budget committee concurs with the agency also. And I don't know about this lower salary. Representative Carlin might be able to elaborate on that.
Representative Carlin, you have any comments?
They did tell us that, you hire somebody new that hadn't been there, maybe the starting salary can be a little bit lower than someone's been there a long time is all that I know. I think we increased the overall budget. Oh, wait, that's 23. Are we on 22 or 23?
We are in 2022.
Okay. That's all I know is that it's a new person, so it's less less money than the older person had, the previous person had.
All right, any further comments or questions in regards to fiscal year 2022? Seeing none, Vice Chairman Hoffman, you may move on to 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The agency requests fiscal year 2023 expenditures of $336,109, all from special revenue funds. This increase is $138, or less than 0.1% above the 2022 request. This increase is due entirely to increased expenditures on computer services. The request includes 4 FTE positions, which is the same as fiscal year 2022. Governor concurs with the agency, and so does the Budget Committee.
All right, any questions for either Vice Chairman Hoffman or Representative Carlin in regards to fiscal year 2023? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and entertain a motion to approve the budgets tomorrow. Vice Chairman Hoffman.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next, we'll go to the Citizens Utility Rate Board, which is Volume 2, page 1481. The agency estimates a fiscal year 2021 revised expenditure of $1.1 million, all from special revenue funds, which is an increase of $86,045, or 8.6% above what was approved in 21. The increase is primarily due to funds carried over from 2020 for consultant services, which they do have the ability to do every year, and this is something we see every year. Any funds that they don't use for these consultant services just gets moved over to the next year. The all funds increase is also due to the purchase of computers and a paper shredder. The revised estimate includes 7 FTE positions, which is the same as approved number. The governor concurs, and so does the Budget Committee.
All right, I'm not seeing any questions. You may move on to fiscal year 2022.
Agency requests a fiscal year 2022 expenditure of $1 million, all from special revenue funds, which is a decrease of $78,144, or 7.2% below the fiscal year 21 revised estimate. This decrease is attributed to returning to normal levels of funding for consultant services after the large amount moved from 20 to 21. The request includes 7 FTE positions, which is the same as 21. The governor concurs with the agency's 2022, and so does the Budget Committee. And I would assume usually every year, probably when we're back here next year, they will probably have some carryover that, again, just like last year.
All right, any questions for Vice Chairman Hoffman or for Representative Carlin? Not seeing any. We'll go ahead and move on to the Kansas State Fair.
All right, that is in Volume 1, 685. And the chairman and I did have quite a few, and Representative Carpenter, in the Legislative Budget Committee, we had several times where we talked about the State Fair, and as you know, the State Fair did not have a fair this year, which greatly impacted their budget. And at one time, they were looking at about a $2.5 million shortfall. And so during the interim, we gave them $1 million through the Budget Committee. LCC approved it. And then we also approved through the Budget Committee $1.5 million. LCC has not approved that. So I don't know, as we get into this, if Representative Carlin might want to talk about that, if they talked about that. But the agency estimates revised estimate of 2021 Total expenditures of $3.6 million, including $1 million from the State General Fund. This is an all funds decrease of $4.7 million, or 56.7%, and an SGF decrease of $1 million, or 50%, below the approved 2021 amount. The agency estimates revised operating expenditures of $2.5 million, including $300,500 SGF. This is an all funds decrease of $4.4 million. And an SGF decrease of $1 million, or 76.9%, below the 2021 approved. The SGF decrease is due to the $1 million transfer from the from SGF coronavirus relief account approved by LCC, and that was what I was talking about. The transfer was approved after the agency submitted its budget, so that's the reason why you evidently see the changes here. The all funds decrease also is due to decreased expenditures across all categories due to decreased revenues and expenditures associated with the cancellation of the 2020 State Fair. These decreased expenditures included salaries and wages for furloughed and eliminated FTA positions, expenditures for entertainers, gasoline, maintenance, and cleaning and utilities. Agency estimates a revised 2021 capital improvement expenditure of $1 million, including $700,000 SGF. This is a decrease of $288,000, or 22.1%, all from special revenue funds below the approved amount. The decrease is due to decreased expenditures on maintenance and delayed start of the Expo Center repair until 2022. The governor recommends a fiscal 2021 total expenditure of $4.6 million, including $2 million SGF. This is an increase of $1 million, or 28.1%, all SGF, above the agency's total fiscal year 2021 revised estimate. The increase is due to the governor including the $1 million transfer that we talked about earlier. The governor recommends also fiscal year 2021 operating expenditures of $3.5 million, including $1.3 million SGF. This is an increase of $1 million, or 39.3%, all SGF, above the agency's 2021 operating expenditure revised estimate. This increase is due to the governor including the $1 million transfer from Corona relief account of the SGF approved by the LCC. The governor recommends fiscal year 2021 capital improvement expenditures of $1 million, including $700,000 SGF. This is the same as the agency's 2021 revised capital improvement expenditures. The Budget Committee concurred with the governor's recommendation.
All right, and also members on WebEx, make sure that your microphones are muted when you're not speaking. And Vice Chairman Hoffman was correct. We had a lengthy conversation in the Joint Legislative Budget Committee in regards to the Kansas State Fair due to the fact that they were not able to have a fair this year. And the $2.3 million that they came before us and had asked for was based off of the revenue that they had generated when they had the fair in 2019. So that's the figure that was used as far as trying to offset, because the Kansas State Fair still has expenses in regards to a yearly ongoing basis. And the real only revenue that they have is the fair itself. Now, granted, they do rent out parts of the fair throughout the year, but the major budget item where they get revenue is from the state fair itself. And without that happening this year, it directly impacted their budget. So I do have a question for Victoria, or Representative Carlin. You may know this question as well. It's been brought to my attention that even though in either it was October or November, when the Joint Legislative Budget Committee approved the $1 million to go to this Kansas State Fair, approved by the LCC in November, that payment actually hasn't been received. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, that is not correct. I spoke with Ed Berger, the interim general manager, on Friday morning, and he stated that they have received the $1 million, and they've only just started pulling it down this month. So that is incorrect. They have received the $1 million.
So they have received. Okay, I was
Yes.
told that they hadn't, so I just wanted to make sure that they had received that. Now, what has not been received, because it has not been approved by the LCC, is in the December 15th meeting of the Joint Legislative Budget Committee, we made the recommendation for the additional $1.3 million to make it whole for the Kansas State Fair. And so that has not been received, obviously, because it hasn't been approved by the LCC according to the legislation that we passed last year. Hey, you're nodding your head, so that's correct.
Yes, that's correct.
And so I will probably, and I'm assuming Vice Chairman will support me on this, is that we go ahead and negate that was made by the Joint Legislative Budget Committee and have that included in the budget for $1.3 million from the existing funds from the coronavirus relief account that we set up last year in the state budget be paid out in fiscal year 2021 in our budget. Representative Carlin, do you have any more comments?
No, thank you. I wasn't sure what was happening there, and I appreciate you explaining that. And no, if there's any other questions, I might have comment, but on that, I'm good. Thank you for explaining it.
And also
I
to
think it's a good way to do it.
And also to elaborate on that, when we had the discussion with the Kansas State Fair, is that they still do have employees, and hopefully this pandemic will go to the, I don't want to say the wayside, but will not be as it was in fiscal year 2020, and we can have the state fair in fiscal year 2021. And so we have to maintain those employees, because if we do have the state fair in 2021 and we don't have the employees to support the Kansas State Fair, it could have drastic consequences if we try to have the Kansas State Fair. And we also did have conversation on how other states were handling the funding of their state fairs across the United States. And so we definitely need to have that 1.3 million transferred to the Kansas State Fair so we can resume operations if we're going to have the state fair in September of 2021. Representative Landwehr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if the committee doesn't have this, if the committee doesn't already have this, I think it would be good for us to get an idea of what are the current reservations by vendors, by their campgrounds. What has been the discussions amongst the fairs around the country? Because one of the reasons that we had to cancel ours was the big traveling vendors had decided not to make the rounds because there wasn't enough fairs that were going to be open and operating. So I think it's important for us to find out how many of those standards, because those booths, like in our big buildings, the tents that are sitting out there with vendors in them, those are all reserved many times years in advance, and a lot of them have standing reservations for their reserved space. So I think it would be good for us to see what commitments that we currently have compared to what those commitments were a year ago, and what are we hearing from the vendors traveling the country for next year.
Well, I think that's a valid point, and we can have that update prior to working the budget bill, and we can see exactly how the vendors and how the state fair is acting in regards to those vendors for the last year and then also for the year coming up.
Thank you.
Vice Chairman Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I might add that the testimony that we received, and Victoria or Representative Carlin can probably talk more about this. The reason that the 1 million and the 1.3 million are so important, if they don't have this, then they have to start dipping into, and they may have already had to start dipping into their funds that they have for scholarships and for prizes for the basically it's a 4-H part of the fair, and the endowments, things like that. That was the only way that they were going to be able to make payroll, was to basically dip into those funds, and that's not what those funds were designed for, and so hopefully this money will prevent them from doing that.
Well, and I do know that, and actually my chief of staff is looking it up. We do have a bill in committee that is Senate Bill 1 that did pass the Senate, which would allow the state fair to dip into their capital investment fund. However, I'm not particularly in favor of that, and we are going to be having a hearing on that bill because there are so many capital improvements that need to be made at the state fair. I hate to have operating funds coming from that fund when we need to address some of the capital improvements at the state fair. We had, like I mentioned before, we had lengthy conversation in the Joint Legislative Budget Committee in regards to the funding. In fact, in November, the governor and I had a conversation in regards to the $1 million. And that's why when we made the motion in the Joint Legislative Committee to do the 1 million, because in the conversation that I had with her, there was the anticipation that maybe in the relief package that was passed in December, there might be a way to use those federal funds to backfill budgets. However, that did not happen. And so when we knew what was happening in Congress and what was going to be potentially signed by the president, and you could not use those money to backfill a deficit in a budget, that's why in December 15th, we made the motion for the 1.3 million for the state fair. And so that would make the fair basically whole based off of the revenues of the 2019 Kansas State Fair.
Mr. Chair?
Carlin.
I'm a little bit confused because I really did not realize the LCC was doing this. It hadn't quite sunk into me. If it's in here, I missed it. But what about the 425,000 that they need for the 600 seasonal employees? Will the 1.3 million that's coming, is that going to include that for that purpose, or is that for other expenses? Victoria, do you know? I don't
Victoria,
know.
do you know? I would assume that's just for ongoing expenses, but.
Correct, Mr. Chairman. So in the budget analysis, the fair has asked for an enhancement of $425,000 to pay for seasonal fair time employees. But if the agency were to receive the 1.3 million, they could use some of those funds to hire the 600 fair time employees. So it doesn't have to be on top of the 1.3 million.
Well, that's what I was wondering, if that would cover, and actually the governor did not recommend the 425,000, and I assume that's why, but I don't know that. So I will look into that as well before tomorrow. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, so and also if the governor did not recommend it and the budget committee basically concurred with the governor's recommendation, then that would be negated, but we would have the discussion tomorrow in regards to any amendment for the 1.3 million to make the Kansas State Fair whole. Representative Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's probably more of a comment. I just want to thank you and Vice Chairman Hoffman for kind of carrying the water for the state fair during the pandemic. I think sometimes when we get to the Capitol, we focus a lot on just the Reno County representatives and ask them to do a lot. But the state fair is something that all Kansans should be invested in. So as we move forward, I just wanted to thank you and the Vice Chair for your leadership in recognizing the importance of keeping the Kansas State Fair going as best we can so we can all meet there together. So that's it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Representative Rogers. I appreciate that. But I mean, I know, Representative Hoffman, myself, and Representative Carpenter, when we had the discussions, we obviously want to make sure that the Kansas State Fair is long-lasting and productive and move forward. I mean, this is the first time in many years that I have not attended the state fair, and so we want to make sure that it's brought back next year. So thank you, Representative Rogers. Any further questions or comments in regards to fiscal year 2021? All right. Vice Chairman Hoffman, you move on to fiscal year 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The agency requests the fiscal year 2022 expenditures of $6.5 million, including $1.4 million SGF. This is an all funds increase of $3 million or 83.9%, and SGF increase of $425,000, 42% above the fiscal year 2021 revised estimate. The agency requests for fiscal year 2022 operating expenditures of $5.2 million includes $690,500 SGF. This is an all funds increase of $2.7 million or 104.7%, and an SGF increase of $390,000 or 129.8% above the fiscal year 2021 revised estimate. This SGF increase is due to the agency's salary and wages enhancement, partially offset by decreased expenditures on debt service interest. The all funds increase is due to increased expenditures across categories due to the rehiring of furloughed employees and to expenses related to holding a fair event in 2021, as well as the agency's enhancement request for seasonal employees. The agency requests 2022 capital improvement expenditures of $1.3 million, including $735,000. This is an all funds increase of $288,217 and an SGF increase of $35,000. The SGF increase is due to increased expenditures on debt principal, service principal. The all funds increase is due to the expenditure for maintenance as well as the repair of the Expo Center beginning in fiscal year 2022. The governor recommends fiscal year 2022 expenditures of $6 million, including $985 from SGF. This is a decrease of $440,000, all SGF below the agency's fiscal year 2022 request. The governor recommends operating expenditures of $4.8 million, including $250,000 SGF. This is a decrease of $440,000 below the agency's. She did not recommend the enhancement of the seasonal workers. The governor recommends fiscal year 2022 capital improvement expenditures of $1.3 million, including $735,000. This is the same as the agency's 2022 capital expenditures. The Budget Committee did concur with the governor's recommendation for fiscal year 2022.
Committee, any questions for Vice Chairman Hoffman or for Representative Carlin? Representative Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Did the agency describe the impact of decreasing the seasonal workers enhancement request?
That'd probably be a question for Representative Carlin.
Yes, they did, and I unfortunately don't have the notes I took in committee about that, but they did express that they needed to be sure that they could have those workers. The fair can't go on without them. And they would really appreciate the enhancement.
Representative Sutton.
And the money that the LCC gave or that we might be giving in place of, that doesn't cover 22.
Correct.
Am I correct? Okay.
Yeah, hopefully in fiscal year 2022, there'll be a fair. Since that starts on July 1, 2021, that would fall into fiscal year 2022.
Oh, okay. So that perhaps that fund might be built back up to handle the seasonal employees?
That would be the intent.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Committee, any further questions for Vice Chairman Hoffman or Representative Carlin in regards to fiscal year 2022 for the Kansas State Fair? All right. Seeing none, we are going to go ahead and push back the Department of Agriculture because there was some discussion and looking in the budget recommendation from the Agricultural and Natural Resources Budget Committee until Chairman Corbett is here to report those out. Again, Chairman, please be aware in the calendar when you are scheduled to report out your committee recommendations. So until tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., we are adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good meeting. Thank you. Good job, Cindy.